What's up guys, Devon back at it again with yet another Devon Explains entry, and today, complying with the people's wishes while
half fucking dead,
I give you Kong versus Rodan. Now obviously it's not gonna be Kong with a charged axe, and obviously it's just not going to be Beast Glove Kong. It's going to be GVK Kong because that is
the most fair opponent against Rodan.
to be fair. Yeah, let's just get right into it because there's really nothing to preface. It's just a good old matchup. Starting off with GVK Kong, since he is extremely simple and has no contention to his feats. The first is that he can fight Godzilla. He loses while Godzilla is holding back, but he still displays some good feats. The first one is the fact that he can stun Godzilla and even knock him out underwater while Godzilla is holding back the most that he does in the film. This is impressive because it takes multiple times his own atomic breath to stun Godzilla. Now, to be fair, Kong stunning Godzilla is far less impressive proportionally compared to what the charged axe did. However, if we just calculate it straight up, it does show us that Kong would be a small fraction of the atomic breath's power, which is consistent with the fact that Kong is significantly weaker than Godzilla, given that Godzilla's physical body is just as strong as his own atomic breath. Moving on to speed, Kong is just faster than D21. It doesn't matter if he's holding back or not, because when both of them were at 50% and Kong was completely overwhelmed and injured and on his back, he was still faster than Godzilla, who was genuinely just trying to kill him and trying to get to him as fast as he could. Kong was faster than a Godzilla. When it comes to durability, Kong can take many attacks from a holding back Godzilla. He can be grazed by atomic breath. He can tank a portion of the axe pulse, and after a prolonged beatdown from a bloodlust Godzilla, he's still alive, even though he does go into a death coma after getting stomped twice on the chest. That's pretty much all of his physical statistics except for physical strength. His physical strength doesn't really have any sort of comparison to Godzilla, since Godzilla is just tiers above him in that, but Kong is indeed physically stronger than Mechagodzilla, even while weakened, or at least physically relative to him while weakened, which, when accounting for full power GVK Kong, is something along the lines of 3 times stronger than Mechagodzilla. Now that's pretty much it for Kong. He doesn't have hacks abilities per se, but he is extremely skilled, smarter than Godzilla. On screen shows many styles like Muay Thai, boxing, pro wrestling, a lot of grappling, lots of stuff. He also is just extremely adaptive. Whenever he fights something for the first time, he does pretty bad, but the second time that he fights it, he just completely dominates it with no difficulty whatsoever, having learned it and adapted beyond that. He's fought Kamazatsu, who's a flying creature who had ranged attacks, minions to help it, and a tail to outrange Kong. And with this, Kong, if he ever fought Kamazatsu again, would be able to completely counteract all of this through sheer skill. This isn't something that I'm just pulling out of my ass. He shows this with Ramurak, he shows this with Godzilla, and he shows this with Mechagodzilla, and he shows this with Scar King. Every time that he fights something, he is just massively better the second time. And this also applies for creatures that are somewhat similar to other things that he's fought before. That pretty much wraps it up for GVK Kong. As for Rodan, the guy's feats aren't
all that much,
in that he doesn't really have many of them. He can fight Ghidorah somewhat, he can take a holding back weakened gravity beam to the chest and he isn't permanently scarred or anything. Presumably he can fight him a little, so he shouldn't be too much slower than this holding back weakened Ghidorah, but he does do 0 damage to Ghidorah. Nada, 0, zip, zilch. If he had indeed hurt Ghidorah, then the novelization would actually say so instead of saying he clawed at Ghidorah, which he clawed at Ghidorah also means he grasped at Ghidorah, he grabbed at Ghidorah. It's the same thing as saying, oh, I scratched at something. That doesn't mean that I'm suddenly ripping it apart or anything. It just means that Rodan was grabbing Ghidorah with his claws. And if he did do some sort of damage, it's literally below notice. It's not enough damage to even be called damage by literally any source material ever. before, and the movie doesn't even show us Rodan even doing anything similar to an attack. So how can we get some sort of attack potency scaling for Rodan? Well, we can use the GVK bracket to say that he would be above Scylla and thus able to hurt the minion Godzilla. Could you say that he would also be above the Mutos in terms of attack potency?
Sure.
But if you do say that, then the Mutos would get downscaled to the minion level. And this is because there's two ways to interpret this. Either A, the GVK bracket is being inconsistent because G14 is massively, and I will say massively again, above Rodan. Because G14 is pretty much just like an unquantifiably lesser G19, and G19 is the only thing that can possibly do anything against Ghidorah. With that in mind, it literally just would not make sense for Rodan to do nothing at all against Ghidorah, but also be stronger than creatures who can shred G14. With the other interpretation would be that the G14 that the Mutos fought was weakened by EMP so much that he was pretty much, if not at the minion level, then a little bit above it, which would return Rodan to just being at the level of a Dominion Godzilla's durability. Though Rodan is still below Dominion Godzilla without a shadow of a doubt, since Dominion Godzilla was keeping him and every other Titan in check, and they all bowed to him even when they could have jumped him or challenged him right then and there. Godzilla keeping the Titans in check also implies that if Rodan did rebel at some point in those 2 years, then he would have gotten slapped down. And if he didn't, then he's literally showing less valor than people like Scylla.
Fucking Scylla.
That's pretty much it for Rodan. Now, when just looking at them based on feats, Kong is much stronger, much faster, and a little bit less durable. Now, Rodan does have significantly better heat resistance and blast resistance, but when we actually calculate roughly how much power Rodan took from that holding back and weakened gravity beam, we would be looking at something like 80% of the atomic breath's power. This is simply looking at a holding back Ghidorah as somewhat relative to a full power Godzilla, given that a non-holding back Ghidorah was ultimately overpowering him. Now, is this an assumption that I don't really have much to back up with? Sure. Does denying it mean you're left with just an unquantifiable feat? Yes. So, be like that. I misremember the calculation. Rodan is less durable than Kong and has more durability than Kong has attack potency, but it's not such a big gap that Kong wouldn't be able to hurt Rodan pretty consistently, though everything that I will say after this still apply. Rodan will not be able to capitalize on his durability because he is just so much slower and so much weaker. Let's not even talk about physical strength, since Rodan has literally 0 feats and 0 lines of scaling for that, so Kong does just have the win on that on account of actually having lines of scaling and feats for that. It ultimately comes down to, can Rodan's fire save him?
The answer is no.
Simply because Kong is just gonna learn not to get in the way of Rodan's wings. So that's gonna be pretty easy since he already knows how to fight flying creatures, warbats, and the much more skilled and haxy Kamazats. And given that he would absolutely no diff Kamazats on account of skill having adapted to him, then the same would apply to this much less skilled flyer. And even if you want to say that Rodan's fighting style is completely different to Kamazats', which you would be correct, we do know another flying creature that just charges at you straight up, and that's the Warbat, which is much faster and physically stronger than Rodan is, and actually also smarter since it also constricts around Kong. So Kong is gonna know how to deal with that, and Rodan is just gonna get grabbed by the neck, slammed onto the ground, and then Kong is gonna get burnt by his fiery wings, and then on second try, he'll just not touch them and continue beating the shit out of Rodan. Now, for anybody who wants to say that, oh, Rodan's feats, like clawing at Ghidorah, is still better than anything Kong does. Now, to begin with, I've already established that clawing thingy-majiggy is not anything. But also, even if it was something, Kong would just scale above it, because he is stated 6 times to be the most powerful creature on the planet, alongside and obviously below Godzilla. And there is absolutely no contradiction to this, since Rodan does nothing against a weakened holding back Ghidorah, while Kong does something against a full power, but holding back D21 while he himself is weakened. Which, mind you, there was a correlation between D21 holding back and that weakened Ghidorah holding back, since they're both stronger, faster, and more durable than D19, but not completely dominant over him, though Ghidorah should still be slightly above D21 even while weakened. The point is, GVK Kong does better against roughly the same enemy that Rodan got no diff by. So by chain scaling, by feats, by narrative, statements, and logic, Kong solos with no difficulty.